Okay, Margaret McCaffery, welcome to Ball is Wife. Margaret is the wife of University of Iowa, Fran McCaffery, and you have an impressive basketball bio on your own, which I can't imagine watching the game being you. And I read the funniest things. So first, I just have to know, like, how do you sit there? How do you sit there in Iowa, like where it's like, I can't imagine. Wait, can I just tell you before that, let me just tell you something. This came at a perfect time because last night UConn played Maryland, it's not Maryland, but Maryland.
Baltimore County or Eastern Shore, one of the two.
Yeah, one of those. That all I knew is that I was going into the game thinking like, okay, we got this. Like, I looked at, which I don't do, I just like look to see like the spread, and it was a big spread, and I was like, okay, we're good, like, all right. And it was a very close game. And you know what? I'm sitting there in the stands and I'm looking around, and as much as you love fans and everything else, it's like nobody was really hyping up our team. It was like every time we missed a shot or we did something, it would be like, oh, they were all huffing and puffing. And I'm like, are you guys serious? Like nobody's getting up. No. And I'm just like, you're like me sitting there by myself saying to me, like, what am I supposed to do? Can you tell us what we're supposed to do in a situation like that? Because I would like, I'll listen to you. What am I supposed to do? Do I
What
fight?
are you supposed to do? I don't know. Could you stand up and point out to the crowd that, they give scholarships to the other team? I mean, I know they're probably not.
I mean, tell me. I'm going to do.
I don't know if I'm the best person to give advice on that stuff.
I know.
Because I probably would get myself in trouble.
So, Margaret, when we heard you were going to be our next guest, I was excited because you bring an entirely different perspective to this whole college basketball spouse thing, because being a player yourself, like Andrea and I, we want to hear, your perspective, because we read a couple of quotes that, you said it can be really challenging to sit in the stands, right?
Wait, can I just read that quote? Because we were like screenshotting it today, which was something that it was just amazing. Okay, you said, I'm going to read the whole thing just because we were just so like, we're like, whoa. Okay. You said it's excruciatingly painful to watch, she said of her husband's games. When you're a player, you're in control to the extent that you can control things that happen on the court. You at least feel like you can. And when you're a coach, you could at least talk about what's going on and feel like you have something to say. As a wife, you just have to sit there. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
That totally sums it up. It's taken me 25 years married to a coach to kind of figure out that I'm not a very good coach's wife. And, and that it's really hard for me. And I think that, and I think it's really hard for every coach's wife or coach's husband for that matter. And I don't think people get it in the outside world. And it's been, well, it was actually one of the things, and we haven't been able to do it in a couple of years, but Nike has done a trip in the past with head coaches and wives on both the men's and the women's sides. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really great experience, especially for the wives. And Fran has even said this to a lot of the coaches who have like not wanted to take time out of their schedule to go on these trips and like, oh, I don't know if I have time. I have to do this, that, and the other. He goes, do it for your wife, because it's such a great time for them to be with other people that understand what their life is like. And, and I think that there's, he's exactly right. And I think that for me, saying what I said and what I say about being a coach's wife, it is hard. And I think it's hard, as I said, for all of them. I think my perspective as a former player and as being a super, I was a relatively feisty competitor, I would say, I guess. Were
you a point guard?
No, I wasn't. I was a very small center. I'm about 6'2". So when I played, I was well, a lot lighter than I am now, unfortunately, or fortunately then. But I was at that time, even, I mean, now I would be really small, but I played against a lot of women that were taller than I was. So, but I was kind of played with my back to the basket more than facing. And, but I was, known to mix it up a little bit, I guess. And just, I mean, everybody who plays at that level is competitive, or at any level, really, if you put yourself out there. And so it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to not, yell. I mean, in fact, like my kids are like, Mom, stop. You can't, stop it. And the other night last night, actually, we were at our youngest. I have 4 kids, and our youngest is a freshman in high school, and he had his first varsity game last night. And Fran's sitting there and he's screaming. And I was like, okay, so as bad as the kids tell you that I am at your games, you're just as bad right now, if not worse, actually. But it's really hard to sit there and watch. I mean, I don't know how old you guys, if you have kids and how old they are, but just wait till your husbands go to the games and they try to sit there and watch. And the refs are even worse than they are in college. And, it's difficult. And, one of the things I like about watching the Hurley brothers coach is that they make my husband look super calm.
Oh, I was going to say that. Your husband is not calm. Let me tell you, because my husband really likes your husband. And he just says the passion. You could every coach is different, and I mean, as soon as you agreed to do this, I literally dug and the videos of your husband. It's so refreshing. It's so nice to see. And I say to myself, okay, when he gets thrown out, what do we do? Do we just sit there, right? Because we just sit and wait for the game to end.
Well,
we don't
one time
follow
I
him,
actually
right?
got thrown out with Fran.
I know.
We read something about that. We were afraid to bring that up. That was
the other couple times Fran's gotten thrown out. I wasn't there. So actually one of them I was, but I did not get thrown out that particular time. But there's nothing wrong with passion. And I think it gets a bad rap those guys are advocating for their players, and it's okay. I mean, Fran's not, as much as he screams and yells, he's not yelling anything terrible at the kids that he coaches. He'll challenge them, but typically it's because he feels like something was done poorly by either one of his players, or maybe a call was incorrect or something. And it's okay to be mad,
Yeah. I mean, this is what they work for. I mean,
it's a big job. Yeah. They're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I don't, the refs should maybe do a better job.
Okay. So when you got thrown out, who threw you out? I need to know.
The ref. Yeah.
Does that ref still talk to you today, or does he?
I don't know that I've ever seen the guy again.
That's funny.
It was a unique circumstance.
That's commendable. That's
and
amazing.
I won't bore you with all the details, but it ended up with me. I was pregnant too, in my defense. So it was relatively
good girl. Yes. That's even better.
And it was just kind of the culmination of, there were a lot of things that happened. It was a game at Hofstra, and there were a number of things that happened with the student section and what was going on the court prior to, that led to my kind of just, I can't take it anymore. And I just pointed out to the official that, if you can't control the game, then this is what's going to happen, as our player was sprawled under the basket, practically unconscious. And he didn't apparently like that I pointed that out to him. Or maybe it was one of the words I used. I don't know, but
maybe. But the game. It's like you played the game. I'm not allowed in this, where I live in cow country, to even say who you played for and then coached with, because I'm not allowed. But Notre Dame, huh? That's and then you went back to coach.
I did. Yes. I played overseas, and then I did a couple other things, and then I went and I coached with Coach McGraw. Wonderful woman.
That's not what I heard. No, I'm just kidding.
I played before. I mean, UConn wasn't any good when I was playing. This was before Gino got there. And anyway, but we had some, pretty good teams. And then she asked me to come back and coach. And that was kind of when Fran and I started that was when we started dating. So I only coached for 1 year. But I'm a better, well, I don't know that I'm a good coach's wife, but I don't know that
I mean, you
needed to
just
keep
know too
coaching
much.
either.
When you know too much, I mean, I don't know any. So like, I mean, I know what I know and it's enough for me. And it's just like, what I know makes me nervous. What I know gets me, like, I choose, I say this every podcast, like I choose not to get involved in the game, not to learn the game, to like, little tiny details of it, because I can't, like, I don't want to, I choose not to because I physically, emotionally can't. Like, I don't want to get, I'm too much in it. I don't need to go in it anymore because it's, it's enough. It's too much. So
Yep.
it's like to sit there and know so much about it. I mean, that's a lot. And then, you have your boys on the team too, that play. So
Yeah.
wait, can you just tell me, I just read about like your son, because my son's a walk-on at UConn.
Okay.
And there's been a few battles here over silly things. And my husband's like, with a few choice words, like, are you kidding me? Like, are you really? So, and they've, and he's like, and then he walks out and goes back to school and he gets annoyed. Like, I know that I just read about one thing. They just had one little issue, right? They worked it out. And ever since then, everything's been good with your kids on the team, with your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. He and Connor got tangled up in Connor's first year, maybe, that just but it was, and I got the call from Connor, he needs to find a new point guard. And then Fran came, we were meeting to go to a movie with friends, and Fran came to the table before we were at a restaurant, and he said, your son is a pain in I was like, wait a minute. You two need to figure it out, because I'm pretty sure the truth lies somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah.
But no, the great thing about Fran and Connor is they really, they are very cerebral, and the way they see the floor and think the game is very similar. And Connor's been going to practice since he was in kindergarten and drawing up plays for his dad and doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, when he was little, so I think now Fran he respects Connor so much. And when he's out there, he sees what, he's not the guy that scores all the time or whatever, but he can play every position. He knows where everybody on every position on every play is supposed to be. He tells the young guys where to go, tells the new guys where to go. I mean, he kind of runs everything, and there just seems to be a little bit of calm. And I think that's helped a lot. And Fran values that, because Fran wasn't a scorer either. He was a guy who orchestrated and ran the team. And so I think he values that. And then Patrick is just very different. He's more of a scorer by nature. And, but I think that too, I thought maybe those two would get after it a little bit, but I think it's been so far so good. I haven't gotten any phone calls anyway. I don't know.
I think that's par for the course, Margaret. I have a 13-year-old son who's in the AAU right now. And yeah, Derek's gotten really tough on him a couple of times where I'm like, oh boy, I don't know. This is going to be hard for me to be in the middle of this.
Yes.
It's like,
yep.
I don't know. It's interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, it's hard. And I mean, the other night I was annoyed with Fran because I thought Connor should have played more.
Yeah. See, I know.
And it was Connor who kind of talked me off the ledge, and he was like, I'm good, Mom. It's okay. And I was like, okay, as long as you're okay, I'm okay. I'll be fine. But it's I will say this, it's very hard with the two of them on the team. It makes it worse. I mean, it's never been easy for me to sit there and watch, but it definitely changes the dynamic.
Well, now you're suffering the ups and downs and the emotions, and you guys are doing really well right now. I know that, but now you got 3 people in your family that are going to be really down in the dumps. And that's tough.
And I mean, last year we lost on stupid scheduling. People we played Christmas night at like 8:00. We played Minnesota. It was so dumb. And we lost like at the very end of the game, and it just ruined. The 26th was the day we got to celebrate Christmas together, and it just sucked, frankly. I mean, and I'm just like, this is dumb. Why are we doing this? But they love doing it. They love this experience, and I'm happy for them that they get to have it together, but it's not easy. And it's hard to be the coaches. There've been a lot of times where Connor's criticized, and I really stay away from social media, but I know that people say things like, oh, he only gets a scholarship because he's the coach's son, or I'm like, no, it's not true. He could have gone to a lot of different places. And if you ask any coach in the Big Ten or whoever plays against us, they'll tell you what they think about his value.
Mhm.
Same with Patrick, although he gets a little bit less of that, maybe because he scores a little bit more. I don't know, but it's just, it's a hard dynamic. So, I caution you going forward.
But how do you, okay, I'm back on fans again. They rubbed me the wrong way last night. So I'm back to them. When you go to away game, like, do you go to away game?
Almost never. It wouldn't be good, probably.
Right. That's what I'm worried. Because last year, but my son's a sophomore, and even though he is, a walk-on, like, I know it's coming, I know it's coming. And, there's only so much you could sit there. I mean, like I always say this almost every time we talk about fans, I always bring up fans because and I'm not, first of all, just to clear it up, I'm not talking about like our fans. I'm talking about the schmoes, that like literally think they know everything and they're yelling, and then that's your own. And then when you go to a away game, they're looking for, it's just, this is what they do. It's a part of, part of it. But then again, you're only human. And I don't know how much I, as a mother, could sit there and listen. I mean, like we always say, talk about our husbands all you want. They get paid. They signed up for this, but my kid, don't link my kid into it. And that's the problem. So I don't think I'm going to be going to away games. Like, I've decided that already, even though I'd love to be a part of it. I don't think it's a good idea,
No, I've never really, it was easy to avoid when the kids were younger because I was busy with them anyway, and they had their own games or there was other stuff going on. But now, given the choice, no, it's just not, I just tell people, it's not fun to listen to other people scream at your family. It's just not. And I don't, and I'm not quiet enough to not turn around and say something back to somebody.
Yeah.
So why put myself in that situation when I can sit in my living room and yell at the TV all by myself? It's fine.
Andrea and I have talked about, that's been one of our topics. We kind of talk about that with every guest that we have, is like, your worst fan experience ever, obviously. Well, I guess that wasn't really with a fan, but it's interesting how fans, they just have no clue or remorse at all. There's some horror stories out there with fans.
Yeah. I guess I don't understand it. I root hard for Iowa because that's who pays my husband's salary, and I cheer for Notre Dame women's basketball because I played there. Other than that, I guess I don't quite understand being so rabid about something that I feel that I would feel compelled to yell at somebody else's child or be mean about. I judge teams frankly by if I like the coach or not, or if I know the coach or not. And if I think the coach is a jerk, then I wouldn't cheer for them. But I know them. I know who this guy is, or I know who that woman is, or what their reputation is. And that's what leads me to kind of form an opinion about something. It certainly isn't, I don't know. I just don't get screaming at other people's children or being rude, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not drunk at the games either. So
that's it too. And like they're what makes this sport magical. I always say the word magical because they do. You walk into an arena and when they're what they call it, the sixth man. How many people? I don't know. It's like they're like it's magical. Like the lights are off and then it could turn into like last night. Like I was like, wow, for a weeknight, there's a lot of people. This feels so good. Like you go into an arena, it's like wow, it's freezing. It's during the week and the XL Center is filled. And then you look around and they're all huffing and puffing. And I'm like, what? Like, stay home. Like, don't, if you're coming, do the whole thing. Like be, like this, you're us, you're on our team. Like you're not against, like help them. Like
they're the people that show up to one game a year, Andrea. Those are
some of those too.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, I do think it's a situation where there's more good than bad. I
is,
remember
absolutely.
one time
Of course.
somebody tweeted at Patrick something really terrible about his dad and they should fire you. And so many people that you'd never see post or put anything out on Twitter or whatever came to Patrick's defense. So, I mean, I think the problem is even in the games, the people that are the loudest, unfortunately, a lot of times are the ones who are the meanest or whatever.
yeah.
And the good people, I mean, they do cheer, but they're not the ones that are, they're not going to scream at the other team and tell them that they're just there to enjoy the game and the experience. And so that's what I try to remember and, kind of think about, but it is hard. I mean, that said, it's better than last year. I don't know if you guys were allowed to go even into your arenas. We were allowed, only family was allowed, and not all the Big Ten, like Minnesota didn't have anybody. There were a number of places where nobody could go, but in Iowa, it was just families. And so I was there, and, I mean, that was hard too.
It was hard. Yeah.
And and the kids prefer to have people there. So
Yeah.
I guess pick your poison, but it's a tricky situation and it's a difficult business. And I don't think enough people quite get it, but.
And you can't be soft. And like I said, like, your husband, Derek, like they all coach with passion. It's like, it's and then they do, if you do well, like, then, even like I saw it in Rhode Island, it's like, once you do well, you become a bigger target for other people. So it's actually like you're like,
That the expectation level goes to here, you start here, you give them a couple years of success. Now they're like, oh, you went to the tournament, you better go every year now. And when you don't, you suck, hit the street, like people, and the average person does not understand that pressure for a family.
No, our last year at Siena, we were really good. And we had gone to the tournament the previous 2 years. And I mean, I think we lost like 2 conference games in 3 years, maybe 3 and 3. I mean, we didn't lose much. And it was just, I felt bad for the kids because after every game, it was just, they were breathing a sigh of relief almost. They weren't really enjoying it because they just felt so much pressure, like they had to win every single time. And it was a good league. Like there were really good teams. Ed Cooley was at Fairfield then. And I mean, there were really good coaches, Joe Mihalik at Niagara. And we were in the championship, and it's a 1-bid league, right? Although Fran maintains that third year, if we'd lost in the conference tournament, he thinks we may have gotten an at-large bid, but we were playing in the conference championship game and we were down like 20 and we came back and won. But it was so hard because it was like, you're watching and you're thinking, if we lose this game, everybody's going to think our whole season and our whole existence is just totally, nothing matters anymore. We were terrible because we didn't win this one game.
Yes.
Where again, Fairfield gives scholarships too. Like they have some good players, some nights you just don't make every shot. And it's, that's the frustrating part, I think, is these are kids and nobody knows what's happening with them. I mean, who else wants, raise your hand if you want your job to depend on what 18 to 21-year-old boys do.
Andrea and I have talked about this a million times. You have no clue what's going on. People ask why a certain player isn't playing or starting or where, and you're like, maybe he's having a rough day. Like, I don't know.
His girlfriend cheated on him and she was, I mean, it's just like they're kids. They go through kids stuff. Like, how were you when you were in college?
I always say that. And you were a college athlete at a high level. So you relate. I was not. I was just a regular student. I went to college with Derek at UMass. He was a player at UMass, but I have said it and I repeat it all the time. These kids have to manage schoolwork, social life, and a Division I athletic schedule. Mm-hmm. I could have never done that in my life. I barely could keep my head above water with academics and social life. Yeah. So cut them some slack, it's like.
It's a lot. It is. And,
it is. And if they're succeeding and excelling, then man, they're absolutely amazing,
Yeah, for sure.
It's a high bar.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, if we could just talk about your son Patrick. This is a very touching story. And first of all, can I just ask you, did you speak at at the Final Four at the wives luncheon
Yeah.
years ago with
Yep.
Robin Roberts' sister.
Could have been that one. Yes.
Yeah,
Because I
you
remember her
did.
being there. Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
That I
Yes.
was telling Nicole, I remember you and the stories, all the women, all of the people that went up there to speak. Nobody warned me. That was my first. Nobody warned me. So I was telling Nicole, I was wiping my face. I like snotted in the tablecloth. I mean, it was the most touching. Like I thought it was going to be a nice, you go, you buy stuff, you sit, you listen to other coaches' wives. I was not prepared. And I knew Julie Boeheim was running it was just, and then I said, I left there and I said, I want, and that's honestly how I met Nicole, is through American Cancer Society. I left there and I actually called the school that day and I said, please get us involved. I have to, like, this is so important to so many people. Like, cancer affects everybody. So your son, Patrick, in 2014, at 14 years old, was diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Yep.
Like, just whoa, how was that like? Like, how did you do this life? Like this already crazy life. And then that means nothing when this comes about. So
yeah. Well, talk about putting things in perspective and not really worrying about, I mean, I wanted to win, but I wasn't gonna, it wasn't the end all be all of what was going on. It was really surreal. It was in February. A guy that played at Iowa, his name is Duez Henderson, Patrick was 13 at the time, and he was working out with Duez. And Duez brought him home one night for me because I had other kids running elsewhere. And he came in and he said, "Can I talk to you about something?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, I'm worried about Patrick." And he said, I've been watching this happen over the last few weeks, and he gets really tired after about 10 minutes and he's not recovering, and he just can't, I know he's in good shape, and I know he's not lazy. He's not trying to get out of doing work. And it was a one-on-one workout. Cause I mean, I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like, I just watched him play 5 AAU games this last weekend, but there's a lot of stopping and starting in the games, and he wasn't playing the entire time and whatever. So I said, okay, well, thank you for telling me. And immediately I thought it was his heart. Some player had just been shut down because of that hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, some other college player. And I was like, oh gosh, how are we going to, if Patrick can't ever play basketball again, this is just going to be terrible. And anyway, so we went to a game, and I talked to our pediatrician at the time, was also our team doctor. And so I said, he apparently hasn't been, feeling great, or isn't recovering, can't get through a workout. And so, of course, he asked Patrick a couple questions. He's a 13-year-old boy. Patrick, how you feel? Fine.
Yeah.
If you notice that you're tired, no, nothing. And they're asking me, like, does he seem more tired? And I'm thinking, well, no, I mean, he's 13. He's kind of starting to grow a little bit. Like, yeah, he sleeps, but he doesn't, nothing more than what I would consider to be normal at this age. And anyway, so the doctor said, bring him on in on Monday. So I brought him into the office, and he did an exam, and he did a bunch of blood work, and he did a chest x-ray. And it was the x-ray that showed that there was like a deviation in his trachea. So the tumor, so then he scheduled an ultrasound, and 2 days later we found out that he had this tumor in his thyroid and it was pushing on his airway. And that's why he was losing, he wasn't getting enough oxygen when he was working out, because your air is supposed to go straight up and down your windpipe. And if there's any kind of a variation in that, it sort of starts to swirl around, and you don't get enough oxygen out of your breath. So anyway, we went into this ultrasound. It was the longest ultrasound of my life. I mean, Patrick fell asleep. That's how long it was. And the tech was coming in and out, and I could tell there was something wrong. And I'm Googling lymphoma and like because I knew it was not good, because you could just tell that something was wrong. And what was happening was she had found the tumor. She was taking the pictures, then showing them to the radiologist, who was asking for more angles and different pictures so they could get a better view of what was going on. And so anyway, I got home, and it was I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday, and Fran was leaving that night. They were at a restaurant having dinner as a team after practice, and then they were getting on a plane to go play Michigan State on Thursday. So I had to call him, and it was at this dinner that he was surprising a young boy who had cancer, who's had been given the trip by a friend of ours. We had a cancer fundraiser for Coaches versus Cancer, and one of the auction items was a trip with the team. And this one man used to buy the trip, and then he would donate it to the Children's Hospital, and then they would pick a family that, where the child was well enough to go. This happened to be a cancer kid. And so the ruse was that he and his dad were just walking into the restaurant, and the team was there. And then a couple of the players came over to this kid and said, "Hey, do you want to come on the trip with us?" And, the kid looks at his dad and, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, we're going." So he got to go. But ironically, then I'm calling Fran, and we had no idea if it was benign or malignant. We just knew he had a tumor. And so I called him and I said, "Well, here's the deal. He's got a tumor. He's going to have surgery. When you come home, he'll be home. He would be home Thursday night after the game, but on Friday, we're going to have to go to the hospital and meet with the doctor, an endocrinologist. Then we're going to have to find a surgeon and all." And he was like, "What?" And he said, for Fran as a coach, he said, I don't know that I've been as calm as I felt that coaching that game at Michigan State, just kind of thinking about what was coming up. And so then and then what happened was, people saw us in the hospital on Friday. And so they started talking about it, and there were things on social media. And so Fran had a press conference the next week, because we were getting ready at the end of the season to get ready for the Big Ten tournament and stuff. And our sports info guy said, "Unless you want the whole press conference to be about what's going on with Patrick, we better just issue a statement," because people had started talking about it. And so we kind of just said, "Patrick has a tumor. We don't know anything about it. It will require surgery. We don't, but, please be respectful," or whatever. And then people were great and really supportive. Talk about fans. I mean, people were, reaching out and praying for you or whatever. I mean, they were everybody was just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, in their infinite wisdom, we scheduled the surgery. We found a surgeon, and the NCAA, in their infinite wisdom, scheduled our first game on the day of Patrick's surgery. Of course. So of course we weren't going to postpone the surgery. I mean, we weren't going to wait any longer to get a tumor out. And in the meantime, he'd had a couple biopsies, and they were what they call indeterminate, which meant that they couldn't tell whether the cells were benign or malignant. And so because the tumor needed to come out regardless, we were going to know the results after the surgery. They would have to chop it up and figure it out better. So Fran left with the team to go to Dayton. And then he flew home on Tuesday morning, or on Wednesday morning, the day of the surgery. And then, so he was there when we went to the hospital. He saw Patrick in the recovery room. He knew everything went okay. We still didn't have any results. And then he flew back and coached the game that night. And I was with Patrick in the hospital. And Patrick was pissed because we lost in overtime. And he got up and started marching around the unit. And I'm chasing him with the IV thing, like, "Patrick, slow down. I don't think you should be walking this fast."
Oh. Coach's kid.
Yeah. And, and there were people that were critical, like, "I can't believe he's coaching this game. I can't believe he would go do this." And, the only thing I could ever say was, well, that's what Patrick wanted him to do. So,
of course,
if Patrick had ever had any hesitation about where his dad should be that night, Fran would have been with him. But there's, that's what Patrick wanted. So, and then it was, I mean, as much as he wanted to win the game, they would have left to go right down to Raleigh to play on Friday from that game had we won. And it was Fran. So instead we lose. Fran comes home. They flew our family home on a private plane that night. And then the next morning was Patrick's 14th birthday. Wow. We all were in the hospital with him. And then he got to come home. And then it was Friday morning that they called to say that the tumor was malignant. So, if they had won, he would have been in North Carolina, and I would have been home by myself to wake my child up to tell him he had cancer. Right. So, it was somewhat of a blessing, I guess. I don't know. But and it was just a surreal thing because of the timing of it. and how public it was. But I don't think that there was really a way around it. I mean, I don't know how we could have kept it a secret, and nor would we have wanted to, because I think what's important, to the extent that you're comfortable doing it, is, these guys have a platform, and if you can help other people and use it, then do it. I say, again, everybody has to handle things the way they can and the way that they feel comfortable. But for us, it was okay to talk about it. Patrick didn't talk about it much.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Jeff Goodman, the guy that connected me with you guys, was, I don't know if he was with ESPN at the time, but we played in the Garden, not like the following season. And he was the first person that Patrick ever said anything to about, like, because he asked permission, and because we'd had kind of a bad experience with him being interviewed, he got really uncomfortable with the questions. And so we were pretty protective of him, but he said, Jeff asked, and we asked Patrick, and he said yes. And so he spoke to Jeff about it.
Oh, wow.
But he still, it's a hard thing for him.
Yeah.
But we've tried, and I thank you guys for your involvement in Coaches versus Cancer, and the Wives program is awesome, and it's an important thing.
And you know what? It's like, raising money, there's not enough money in the universe, obviously, to cure cancer. It's like, what's the next thing you could do? My whole thing is, raise money. Like, yes, absolutely. But it's the awareness. It's the support group. I lost my dad, very early, and he got cancer in his 30s. He passed away in his early 50s. It's like, everybody you talk to has some kind of connection with cancer, and it's not prejudice. It goes to anybody. It goes to every, like, it hits, and you either you win, you're affected by it. You either win, unfortunately some people, it's just like, and you tell the story because, like, like Patrick's story, like, there's, he conquered it, and it's, everybody needs to see, like, it's, you use that platform for awareness, and it's a blessing to have it, to go out there and tell everybody, like, it happens, like, and this is how we dealt with it, and and thank you God, he's doing well, right?
Yeah, he's doing well. It's a struggle. I'm not going to lie. He has to take a pill every day for the rest of his life. He has no thyroid, and it definitely affects his. It's really hard for him to gain weight. It's it affects his energy level. He sleeps a ton. But he gets to do what he loves, and he had a friend who was diagnosed at the same time, and his friend Austin died a year later. And they were together a lot, and they knew what each other was going through, and it's something that Patrick has to live with. But we're really close to Austin's family, and Patrick remembers him. He has this really, really cool tattoo on his chest, and in honor of Austin. And I think it's what we can do to continue Austin's legacy and memory too, to keep talking about it and keep trying to help families who are going through it. And you're right, you win, you lose, it sucks no matter what, but it's amazing the people that you meet when you're going through it too. And I have so many stories of the crazy things that happened while we were going through it, and even since then. And I think it's it's important. And now with COVID, treatments are being delayed, and people haven't been screened, and all of these terrible things are happening. So it's important. We're talking, I'm now on the national board of the American Cancer Society, and I've been trying to get them to use the Coaches versus Cancer program. So I'm going to put in a plug and get your husbands to try to see if they would want to be, join the council, or at least involved in the movement, and get you guys on the Wives Committee. Because, we're trying to say, like, you don't have to go raise a bunch of money, but if you would use your platform to encourage people to go and get screened, and go to the doctor, go do whatever, you don't have to have a big party. We'd love it if you have a big party and you give us $500,000 or whatever. Great. But if that's not in your wheelhouse, at least use your platform and talk about it, because it's so important.
That definitely connected Andrea and I. We were both doing some work for Coaches versus Cancer when we met. And to your point, you've said it many times. And our original inspiration for this podcast is to bring us wives together because of our platform. It is our husband's platform, but we should be using it for things just like this, and we are a team, we're a family, we're a sorority. We had another person on our previous podcast who had a very tragic story with her daughter and cancer. And that's what we want to do. That's what we're here for, to connect us all, to, strengthen numbers.
Yep.
And yeah.
Plus, I mean, let's face it, who does all the work? We do, right? I mean, they
Right.
just go out and
I mean,
coach.
we run the show. I know.
They might have the microphones in front of their faces, but
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. It's tough. And to throw in something like that, it's like, when you sit there and you watch, in fact, I was excited because I just got some guy in the food store yesterday said to me, are you Coach's wife? I mean, he said Coach's wife, which is kind of like, but I'm like, yes, like, how did you know? Like, he's like, I listened to your podcast. And I'm like,
Oh,
you
cool.
did? I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's like, it's getting out there. It's slowly but surely, but we did this just for us because like we need to know, like, I want to know what you did. Like, I mean, I know of you, like, to now know you on like a like this kind of, it's like, it's so heartfelt, like to get to talk to these coaches' wives and to say, like, I know a little piece of what you did, what you've been through. I mean, come on. It's like, this is a tough life. We all find ourselves. I mean, I cry till I laugh sometimes because I'm like, come on, like, silly. And, people just see the money that you get thrown out. But I'm telling you, like, I say this every podcast too. I keep repeating myself, but you get paid a lot of money for a reason. This shit is not easy. And you know what? Like, we need our support group with as many people we could possibly get. Like, like, it is what it
I
is.
mean, my husband's a lot older than your husband's, and he worked for a really long time and didn't make any money. So,
Well, this is new for us too. So yeah.
Yeah, it's no, I mean, I commend you guys. I mean, I talked about doing something like this last year with Jeff, and I kind of just said, I'm just going to get myself in trouble if I do this. So,
Well, I said, what's a podcast? I don't even know what the hell that is.
That's the other thing. I was like, I don't even know what that means, but
I have to say,
I think it's awesome. And I think more people need to do it, or we just need to have big group FaceTimes or something,
that's a good idea. We should have one big group Zoom one time.
Yes. Yeah.
We, Andrea and I hold back, a lot of the stuff. I'm like, in the beginning, we're like, are we allowed to talk about that? I don't know. Like, there's so many things I want to say sometimes, but and I think it'll come out as time goes on. We laugh because when Andrea and I talk, we're like, this is what we should be taping right now, is like our regular conversation, because this is the real deal. Right?
The Real Housewives of basketball, college basketball or something. Yeah.
But it's
although
like,
I'd like to think we're maybe less crazy than a lot of those people, but
I don't know. It's
not.
debatable because it's like, I say to myself, like I would say to myself, like, I've said it before. Like, I mean, even last night, like I was reading up on you, and it's like sitting there, I said, what would Margaret do? Like, what would Margaret, what am I supposed to do? Like, I know, like, but the thing is, like, what you're talking about. Like, I don't. And I say to myself, okay, we interviewed Danielle Sargent. Like, she looks like she would be more like, and know what she's saying, and then like go in after, but just be like, what are we supposed to be doing? Like, I just need to know, and not just sitting in a crowd, but also like, what do you do with staff? What are like, I don't know, because it's like my husband was never really an assistant. So when you go into like, what exactly is my job title? Like, what I know, like, hey, I'm roped into this. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to have my own career because this one was so grueling, and we didn't have money to, hire nannies for me to go do what I wanted to do. So here I am. So what can I do to help? How could I pull myself into this business and to help other people? And I'm like, when Nicole and I would meet up and we would, do all our emotions together, it's like, everybody else, we need to know, it's like, we only knew what each other was doing. So thank you so much for doing this with us. Like, you have no idea. It's like, you just feel a connection, and it's very comforting to know what other people, other people's stories. And I can't thank you enough.
I agree. I mean, some of my closest, most wonderful friendships are with other wives that I've gotten to know, because you can just kind of be real, and they get it.
Well, you mentioned in the beginning the Nike. I mean, that's how we really bonded was the Adidas. It's like, I mean, she was Nicole Kellogg, UMass's wife. Ew, like I wouldn't, she like, it's
Yeah.
like we've lost,
Your
it's a
rivalry.
miserable
Yeah.
rivalry. Like, ew, like you've made my life miserable. And it's like those trips is what makes you realize, like, I love you. Like, like what do you like? Let's be best friends, and she's like, okay. And here we are.
Yeah. Maurice Cooley said to me one time, she's like, I hated you. Like, oh, sorry.
Isn't she? I need to get her on.
She's awesome. I love her.
Well, let me tell you, I'm texting her tonight because she said, I said to her, I'm like, I need you on this podcast. And she's like, girl, I swear I thought about you today. I'm going to call you for real tonight. That was 3 weeks ago. So she's done. And when we play each other, like we'll be in like, I cry a lot. Like every time we play, Nicole, like I'm a cry, like I'm not really a crier. I cry about like emotional stuff. So one time once you have a connection with somebody, it's hard to, I don't want anybody to lose. And she comes into the gym and into the arena and she
used
comes
to
over.
split the wins when we were at UMass in Rhode Island. We had to play. I was like, you can get this one, but we got to win the next one.
And I'd be like, let's do it. And high five, and we go.
Don't tell anybody that we said that.
And we usually did. But Nerys, I was crying and I said, I am so sorry. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want to play. And she's like, cut the shit. It's a game. And I'm like, oh, like I felt so much better. Like she's so good to talk to. Like really need somebody like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nicole and I would just cry all day.
And we also we've talked about this with a few other guests, like the non-basketball friend. It's kind of important to have at least one or two of those.
Sure.
Like, the person that doesn't care whether you won or lost, or if your husband's about to get fired, or, like they just love you for who you are.
I know. I have a couple, in some are like, I met a woman and she was sort of apologetic. Like, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know who you're, it doesn't mean it. I was like, that's why I liked you.
Exactly.
We didn't have to talk about that stuff.
We're going to have a whole podcast dedicated to the non-basketball friend.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? It would be funny because I think that it's really eye-opening for a lot of them when they first come into your life and they don't really, they don't think about it like, or they might be fans of the team that your husband coaches or not athletic people at all, but what they learn and the kind of the eye-opening nature of what the friendship reveals is pretty. It is. And we have friends here who people say to them when they find out that they're friends of ours, like, oh my God, how can you be friends with them? And they're like, Fran is like the most chill. He's the guy that falls asleep on the couch at your house and
exactly.
Snores. I mean, he's nothing like just because he yells at the refs on the sideline he's not a crazy person. He's he's a great dad. He's funny. He's,
Right. We're normal people. And guess what? This is just basketball. We say it at the end of the day, it's just basketball.
Yeah.
We're just
when we played Tennessee was the game that we lost in the NCAA tournament when Patrick was sick, and Conzo Martin was the coach then at the time, and he's a cancer survivor, and he was awesome. And the Tennessee fans were like wearing Patrick stickers or something, and of course I wasn't at the game, so I don't know. But he said, this is what we do. This is not who we are. Right. And you have to remember. I mean, I have to say that to myself, like. I'm watching this. It's not my life. Like it's my life, but it doesn't define me. I'm just watching it.
Cannot define us. No. Yeah. And
I think
you get sucked in sometimes with that, but you really got to remove yourself and regroup and come back to balance. Like,
for sure. That was simple, but powerful, right? Like it really is that quote. It's like, it's true. And it's like, they're normal. It's like, like everybody thinks Danny comes home and starts like, like flinging things off like the counters and, no, it's not how it goes. He's very, very quiet.
Yeah. I'm usually actually worse after the games than Fran is. Cause I can't process anything, well, I mean, I yell every once in a while during the game, but you don't get to like, and he's already yelled or felt better about what, or he's more analytical anyway. I'm a little more
Right.
emotional about it. And so I'm usually like, oh, I can't believe.
Yeah.
So
I read your quote saying you, when you're a player, you feel more in control. And I have to say verbatim, Derek has said that so many times to me, like, cause he was a player, as well as Danny. And it's a different way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, you might have a bad game, but at least you were the one out there trying to do it.
That's right.
I mean, everybody has bad games and, but you just, but I'm sure for, their parents or their whatever, when you guys had to watch them play, I mean, it's hard. It's not very fun when you know that it's not going the way they want it to.
Yeah.
And they put in a lot of time and effort and, so but it's,
Here we are. My God.
There's also a little luck involved in all of this too.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it just goes your way and sometimes it doesn't.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. We had a year at Greensboro 100 years ago. We were 7-22, and I think we were 15 points away from like 20 wins. We lost on every buzzer beater way you could possibly lose. Double overtime, single overtime, guy throws it in over his head. I mean, it was just one of those years where it just was like, I don't know how many other ways you can lose a game at the buzzer.
Yeah.
What a feeling. No worse feeling, right? It's like, come on.
No. Yeah.
God.
I mean, it's great when you're on the other side of it, but
Exactly. Exactly. Doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't. No, but I think it's great that you guys are doing this, and I appreciate you even asking me to participate. But I think it's,
we thank you. We thank you. This is we were so excited to have you, and like your stories to open up. We can't thank you enough. And now it's just like you said, the bond is just something. We do have something very special. Like we do, and and now we have your number. So if you get like
I was just saying, now you have my cell and I have yours, so now we can just like text and call. Set up a Zoom call.
Yeah. Andrea and I were thinking maybe during tournament time, we'll try to regroup with some people and do this again. Maybe that's when we can do our big Zoom chat.
Yeah, that would be fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Although maybe not recorded, because
Probably not. Like I can't. I know the worst part of this whole thing, but as you see, I gave up. I used to at least throw curls in my hair. I don't even do that anymore.
I told you the last recording I saw, I had 2 different eyebrows. I'm like, oh geez, I can't forget it.
Well, I was doing like glamour shots. I had like the hair to the side, and I'm like, dude, and now I didn't even put lip gloss on. I'm like, I gave up already. That was quick.
I never know how to put the like, do you tilt it up? Do you tilt it down? When it's like, whatever.
I'm sitting on
my actual setup right now. I have 2 tables stacked on top of each other so I can get the right.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to work on this now.
I know.
You're perfect.
Perfect. Well, we wish you all the health, you and your family, and the best of luck for this season and all the seasons to come. And we thank you so much for being on our Flawless Wife podcast. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and good luck to you guys.
Thank you so much.
I'll be cheering for you.
We'll be cheering for you too. Thanks.